Thanks. I'd like to thank everybody for coming out, and Ember+forge for having us, and Jay and the great alien Buddha for putting this on. This is an oldie. After the show. I like to tell myself we were fighting for the greater good of the world outside when we put our plastic cups in the precise middle of the room and raised them a bit so that everyone could see them. And the stereo turned its volume down, and Thomas made a toast to the fires of friendship, and we all laughed a little. There was something outside that we didn't want to let in, and it wasn't the cold rain that was maybe trying to tell us that the summer was ending, that the kids were already back in town with rental trucks and overbearing parents. Maybe it was something more intangible, like time or responsibility, something we were trying to outrun because it didn't understand us. It wanted us to be something we didn't want to be. And maybe the only defense we knew, the only ammunition we had against this uncertain enemy was our certain foolishness, ridiculous shots made in apartment kitchens, crushed pills snorted up the nose that allowed dancing to disco and Motown until morning. Only by living like this, saving ourselves from whatever it was that was out there, just beyond the windows and the fire escape, were we able to make good of the world, and were we able to help it in some way, if only by setting an example for it, with a brief night of unmediated extremism, constructed out of our separate narratives, culminating and then receding, as if to say, we're here, we're alive, we'll be here again. I'm gonna juggle books, Matt.
Douchebag.
Douchebag. The river underneath the city. I was half drunk and exhausted, and the bar was loud with pool and jukebox noise and Saturday drunks. But I think I overheard Bob telling Moody about the fourth river, the river underneath the city, and about how the Mayans believe the point where the four rivers converge to be a portal that will take us all somewhere else later this year. Just then the jukebox inexplicably ripped into an old Dizzy Gillespie hard bop number, which seemed to confuse and bewilder a number of the people in the bar. 5 minutes into it, a woman shouted, "Does anybody know how long this song is?" I wondered how many people in the bar knew about the river underneath the city. It's strange how people can live somewhere and not know what is under their feet. No stranger, though, than how we walk around every day and don't know those around us. It's funny how we think of each other, but how little we really know about each other. I didn't know much more than the girl's name, but I can still remember her at the cage, can see her in the booth, singing off-key along with the song she played on the jukebox, Greetings to the New Brunette. I wonder if she's still in Chicago. Thanks. This is my latest book, Muskrat Friday Dinner. And this poem has an epigraph by the poet John Berryman. Searchlight. No one is ever missing, John Berryman. My God, how I loved living on the earth. There were those things that sustained me all those years, the names of the clouds, the vesper sparrows lined up on a branch, her bedroom light on behind a red curtain. I would circle the block just to see that, knowing it meant she was in there, alive, perhaps waiting for me and perhaps not, but there, and that presence was enough. All right, in honor of the haiku readings coming up, I'm going to do some short poems. This one's called Driving from the Shop to the Warehouse. Red brake lights from the cars of Forbes Avenue reflecting off the headstones of the graves in the cemetery on the hillside. No one notices. My father asks me what success looks like. My father asks me what success looks like for a poet, and I don't have a quick answer. I mull it over for some vague amount of time, and knowing that he won't necessarily like it, I say, success is continuing to write the poem. Found poem, Express Lane, Giant Eagle. If there's enough money, get me pork rib. Okay, one more from this book, and then I'll move on to some new stuff. This I wrote for my friend Chris Collins. We have any Otis Redding fans out there? No. This is for you guys too. This LP contains satisfaction. The other night, up at your place again, I hope that you didn't think me too rude when I, drunk off so many boozy beers, took over your stereo, thumbing through your recent acquisitions, beat to shit but certainly playable, until I found that old Otis record, the one we'd spoken of years ago in some old Pittsburgh dive, and I put that record on, and turned your stereo up about 10 or so notches, and your father-in-law said Otis's name, and I said yes to him. Then I looked back over at the record sleeve and saw the old sticker on the front cover, and again I said yes. Okay, these last handful of poems are from my forthcoming book, Mount Trashmore.
Best title ever.
Another short one. Confessionalism. My heart is growing a little bit smaller with each passing day. I know I shouldn't talk about it. And another found poem, short poem. Found poem, handwritten sign behind the bar at the Crystal Lounge in Alliance, Ohio. Buckets are to be drank that day. No rollovers or taken home. All right, I think I just have like 3 more. A couple of short ones and then a longer one. Ode to a guy in a Guided by Voices t-shirt listening to Guided by Voices. When you love something that isn't yourself or something you created, there are times when you have to give in utterly and completely to that love. Embrace the magnitude of it. Sit right down and drink a whole keg of it. No regard for tomorrow. North Dixie Highway. I was driving down Dixie, closing in on the freeway, and coming towards me, a guy on a red moped, left hand steering but with a cigarette between 2 of his fingers, right hand holding a flip phone to his ear, the 2 stacks of Fermi, the nuclear power plant, looming just behind him. Thanks again, everybody, for listening. This is my last one. How I remember the night Pavey recited from memory his great Waffle House poem in the parking lot of the Waffle House in or just outside of Blue Springs, Missouri. It was late, after a reading, and we poets were hungry. We'd had milkshakes earlier for dinner, then beers or shots or wine, and a lot of poetry. Perhaps too much. And poetry can only satiate a certain kind of hunger. And so the Waffle House sign hovering just off I-70 called out to us, was a sort of beacon in the night sky, and our small caravan pulled off the freeway for grub. We sat at the counter, and the waitress was sweet to us. I think all of us ordered breakfast, several of us getting their hash browns scattered, smothered, and or covered. It was clear the Waffle House chef took pride in his work. Pavey covered the bill, saying that he knew it wasn't easy being poor poet on the road, and he was right about that. And one last gift, before we headed our separate ways, was a poem recited from memory in the parking lot there with the cop cars, the Holy Waffle House sign above us, a poem about a Waffle House, of course. And I can't recall how it went exactly, or even what it was about, save that it mentioned a Waffle House. But I think that I remember Pavey quoting scripture in it, citing texts some people believe came from some great unseen, all-powerful, all-knowing force of life. And for a moment, I believed in something greater than myself. The Spirit moved me, there, in or just outside of Blue Springs, Missouri, in that Waffle House lot. I don't believe it was God I felt. I think it was poetry. Thank you.